Hey everyone, welcome to session 83 of the Behavioral Observations podcast. No sponsors today to speak of, so I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I have going on. And don't worry, I'm not going to talk about remote fieldwork supervision for BCBA trainees again, you know, that book I co-wrote with Dr. Lisa Britton. Instead, I want to talk about an event that I have coming up on May 1st. I will be doing a guest membership hangout, which is essentially an Ask Me Anything. And our guest for this hangout will be none other than Dr. Evelyn Gould. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to behavioralobservations.com/membership. The membership is kind of like my homebrewed version of Patreon. And on that page, behavioralobservations.com/membership, it lists some of the things that you get with that program. So we get together, I don't know, every couple of months and have a hangout with a previous guest, and members get to ask this guest questions directly, which is a lot of fun. You'll recall that a few sessions ago, I published a hangout session that we did with none other than Pat Fryman, and it's a lot of fun. So again, we'll be doing that on May 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I also have a pretty good deal going on with CEs. Right now you can get 12 CEs for under $100, and it's perfect for BCBAs needing continuing ed, whether you're newly minted or not. And last but not least, if you're going to ABAI, I have a few panels that I'm participating in, and I'll include those details in the show notes. Both will be on Monday of the conference. So I hope to see you there. I'll be handing out stickers. I've got 500 stickers, and I think I'm going to order another batch of 500 because they go pretty quickly. And so I'm looking forward to participating in these panels. I'm doing a panel with Ryan O'Donnell and Matt Normand on dissemination, and I have another panel with Rick Cabina, Andy Bondi, and Mark Dixon. And I'll be actually moderating that one, and I think the title is something like Behavior Analysis Sells Out. I think I have that incorrect, actually. I'll get the correct title in the show notes of today's episode. But we're going to talk about things having to do with running a business and marketing products and services in the ABA space. And it should be good fun. So on to today's show. My guests today are... it's a multi-guest show, and my guests today are Andy Chavez from BehaviorMe, Jane Logvinova from ABA Desk, and Adam Dreyfus from Answers Now. And we're going to be talking about tech trends in ABA. Our conversation will cover tech applications for staff training, data collection, and parent training. Expect lots of links in today's show notes. So again, you can go to behavioralobservations.com and look up session 83. And last but not least, Jane has generously offered a 50% discount off the first 3 months. If you sign up for ABA Desk, just use the promo code MCPodcast, and those are in all caps, to get that discount. So that's it for opening remarks. So without any further ado, please enjoy this fun conversation about tech trends in applied behavior analysis.
Welcome to the Behavioral Observations Podcast, stimulating talk for today's behavior analysts. Now here's your host, Matt Sikoria.
Hey everyone, welcome to this special edition of the Behavioral Observations Podcast. I am joined by a multitude of people here, not just one guest like we usually have. We're doing a roundtable on tech and ABA. I'm joined by Andy Chavez from BehaviorMe, Jane Logvinova. Jane, I pronounced that correctly, right?
You did.
All right, from ABA Desk. And lastly but not leastly, Adam Dreyfus, the co-founder of Answers Now. So, folks, thanks for, again, joining me today. I know it is bright and early where, Jane, I know you are right now. It's ungodly early in Colorado. So thanks for cranking up the coffee maker earlier than probably you usually would and joining us. So I am going to just kind of do what I normally do and have people kind of go around the table here and just introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what you do. So, Andy, why don't you go first, given that you've kind of helped me put this whole thing together. So help us put this in context.
Sure thing. So, all right. So my name is Andy Chavez, and what is BehaviorMe? So BehaviorMe creates virtual staffing solutions for the autism therapy industry. So that's a little bit of a different take than I think most people know us for, actually. And I'll get into the nitty-gritty as to why we made that switch. How did I personally get into behavior analysis? Oh, geez. So I guess full disclosure, I'm not a behavior analyst. Everyone else I'm surrounded with by is a behavior analyst, and I've been in sort of this behavioral circle for the last couple of years, and it's been a lot of fun as an outsider coming in and understanding the science of human behavior, and it's been really, really cool, and been really fortunate enough to speak and meet and befriend a lot of some really amazing individuals. And then how did BehaviorMe start? Geez, it's four of us, myself, Annie, Andrea Villegas, and Chris Medina. And it's really started at the University of Florida as a business plan competition that, depending on who you ask, it went really well or went really wrong. We evolved to what we are now, which is, like I said, virtual reality staffing solutions for the autism industry.
All right. I look forward to getting into what that actually means in a little bit. So, Jane, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. So I'm Jane. I'm a BCBA, still, actually.
Jane is a BCBA. Yeah, that's right.
I am a BCBA with the perk and everything. And I'm also the co-founder of ABA Desk. So I'm literally one half of ABA Desk because we are only two people. So ABA Desk is a browser-based data collection system. We also do graphing, of course. So we help clinicians and educators restore work-life balance by providing affordable and user-friendly service. We automate stuff like program updates, phase transitions, training, and even graphing. And in terms of how I got into ABA, I kind of just fell into it. I don't know if that's like the best answer, but I always knew I wanted to work with people, especially like in a therapeutic way, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. So until I figured it out, I started off as a teacher, tutoring on the side because teachers don't make much. And then through my tutoring connections, I was given the opportunity to dip my toes into ABA. And I fell in love right away and applied to grad school, and that was it. And then it's funny, ABA Desk actually started off as kind of a fun project between me and my boyfriend, co-founder Dwayne Etchison. He's kind of like the knower of all things. One of those things is programming. A few years ago, he asked me if I wanted to learn how to code so we could develop something together just for fun. And obviously I was like, what?
Just for fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. That's awesome.
No, let's go out to dinner instead.
No.
I'm kidding.
Dive right into this and learn more things. So I was obviously really hesitant, but I gave it a shot. I don't know. For a while, we racked our brains about what to make because it wasn't even like meant to be like something that we would develop for the public. It was just like something to do together, just whatever for fun. One day I was having my typical rough time of staying focused on my monthly graphing ritual. For context, I have ADHD, so everything takes like 7 times as long as it should. So he's like, why don't we just make something that graphs for you? And it kind of just snowballed into what it is today. With the help of a few dear friends kind of volunteering their time and expertise.
It's funny when you come into contact with someone with that sort of background and they're just like, oh, there's an easier way to do this. And, I've had that happen to me in various aspects of not necessarily my career per se, but I've got a handful of friends who are kind of techie. And when they come at it without that, without having been, I guess, bathed in the behavior analytic culture, perhaps Andy has some context for this that we can get into later. It's like, oh, that different perspective that doesn't have the learning history baggage that some of us bring along for the ride. That must have been pretty interesting for your boyfriend to be like, hey, this is probably a smarter way to do this.
Yeah, for sure. And I was like, are you sure you want to do that?
That sounds like a lot of work.
Seems like the least exciting project ever, but I'd very much appreciate it. So yeah, we launched this January.
All right. Congratulations. Cool.
Thank you.
And Adam Dreyfus, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Good morning. I am the co-founder and chief science officer of Answers Now. We are a web-based mobile platform that connects parents of children diagnosed with autism and disabilities with certified clinicians. I also have a day job where I'm the director of the Sarah Dooley Center for Autism in Richmond, Virginia. So I wear quite a few hats. It's a pretty straightforward school for impacted kids. We serve about 100 kids. Answers Now was born about 2.5 years ago. My co-founder, Jeff Beck, is a licensed clinical social worker, and he was running an in-home program through St. Joseph's Villa, which is kind of the parent organization of my school. And he came, we had lunch one day, and he was doing Talkspace as kind of a side piece. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's text-based therapy for people with like anxiety and depression. And he showed it to me and said, hey, could we do this for autism? And I looked at it and we kind of flipped through it. We talked about it a little bit. And I said, nah, it's not how it works. We can't really do that. Went back to my desk and my HR packet was sitting there and I flipped it open and I was looking at Teledoc. And it occurred to me, like, if you can manage the liability of teledocking, we should be able to do something with ABA.
All right, tell people what Teledoc is real quick, please.
Sure. Teledoc is synchronous talk to your doctor. So like on a Saturday afternoon, your daughter gets a rash. You can jump on a Skype call with the doctor, show the doctor the rash, and they can prescribe something. So but it's synchronous. It puts you in the same place at the same time so that they can make a recommendation. But I can't, like, the liability, you get something like that wrong and it turns out to be a much more serious thing. So that was one of the first sort of hurdles, intellectual, and that I kind of stepped over as we went down this path. Jeff and I came together. We sketched out what we thought was a sort of a workable way to deliver ABA services through a text-based platform. And away we went. That was 2.5 years ago. Now we've been through 2 really high-powered accelerators. We're in our second round of investment. We have several full-time employees and quite a few BCBAs working for us, and over 300 parents that we're impacting.
Well, that's amazing. So some of those words that we're going to get back to in a minute that may not necessarily be familiar, things like accelerator and rounds, and when we're going to get to like kind of entrepreneurial speak portion of this discussion. So I want you to. I
knew none of it when we got started.
Right. So
incredible education.
So for those listening along, not exactly sure what some of these terms might be, we're going to get to those in due course. So, and I may take the liberty interrupting you guys here and there if I feel a little help to define these terms sooner rather than later. So, all right. So again, Andy was extremely helpful in kind of getting this group together, and also helped me kind of work out a list of talking points. So I'm going to kind of touch on some of these things, and we'll just do kind of like a free for all. And I don't know if I'm going to ask them in any particular order here, but there's so many directions we can go in with all of these things. So I guess the thing I will start out with is what pain points led you guys to start the work that you're doing right now, and pain points, again, is a kind of entrepreneurial term, if you will, or a business term, which just means that there's, at least from my point of view, it's something that kind of defines a potential marketplace for a product, service, idea, or what have you. So Jane, let's start with you. You kind of got into it a little bit in your intro, but let's dig into that a little bit more.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and I would say just like for the industry as a whole, it's not necessarily about me being a squirrel, but I think like the major pain point is we have to update programs as BCBAs because, I mean, our client progress kind of depends on it. And yet some funding sources don't even pay for us to do it. And it takes, a decent amount of time and often unpaid time. So not only are we working for free, but we're also just kind of sacrificing our own personal time, our well-being sometimes. I said the word time a lot. I don't know if that happened. So I just wanted to put something out there that I guess was easy enough to use in session, was affordable for people who can't afford it because most people can't. So people can put their energy like where it matters most, their clients.
I see. And how many people are using your platform right now, approximately?
Like 150.
Wow, that's great. And tell me a little bit about the feedback you're getting from them in terms of, I think it would be interesting also to kind of let us know if there are things that things that you thought were going to be awesome and didn't work and so forth. So if you can kind of maybe share some of the growing pains along with that as well, that would be helpful also.
Oh yeah. What do people? I mean, a lot of people have just said, "Hey, it's really easy to use." Like one of our users is like, "Hey, I set up 10 clients in half an hour," and I'm like, "Okay, wow, okay, good job." So that's cool. So it is kind of simple, so people can hit the ground running. Something that didn't work: setting concrete deadlines and saying, "Hey, yeah, this is going to be due whenever," because you don't realize that things can break until they do. And we don't want to put anything out there that's not working because like this is somebody's bread and butter, like or a kid's progress is depending on us actually like functioning correctly. So I think, that little piece is definitely a big contributing factor to it.
Yeah. Excuse me. I do want to, so I want to dig into that piece because what is when you said things can break, that's something I'm curious about. Tell us a little bit about how you guys kind of test this stuff to make sure it works.
Yeah, and like kind of when we test, at first we're not even testing it like in the production environment. We have a development environment because you have to kind of do it in a vacuum before you put it out there because otherwise, like, oh no, I broke the matrix. So we're actually just like, running the front end and the back end at the same time. I would, input data, make sure that the data is input in the correct order, that the phases are, transitioning correctly because we do automate everything based off of criteria that the user sets, that it graphs where it needs to be, that it displays kind of as it should in a variety of different places. And it only takes like one little thing to be off to make it look like the whole thing exploded. So thankfully, we don't put that part out there. We test as much as we can kind of in that development environment.
I see. And I was just curious because I do experience that in my, I think whatever, I guess, technology that I deploy for the podcast is probably a rounding error compared to the complexity that you guys are contending with. But it is interesting, like, when I set up something on my website to do X, Y, or Z, it stands to reason that if you set something up, that it should stay functioning, and it's just
you'd think that, right?
Right, and then it's funny when something gets updated or something, and then one piece of your website back end doesn't shake hands with the other piece now because something's updated, and that's something that I kind of struggle with. So
yeah, and I feel like that's how code works. Sometimes it's like you fix one thing and it breaks another or two other things. So you really have to test. And the hardest part is, finding those corner cases of like, hey, I didn't even realize you could break it that way, but that's good to know. I see Andy shaking his head like, oh yeah, I know.
So Adam, let's get your experience with this. So what were the pain points you were trying to solve with Answers Now?
The core pain point is we as an industry are not doing a very good job of supporting parents. If you're lucky enough as a parent for your kid to go to a school like mine, it's run by behavior analysts. It's a top flight kind of school. I've got about 100 parents, and almost to a person, they report feeling isolated, overwhelmed, and stressed out. And those are parents getting really good services. You work away from that center very quickly, and you just amplify the level of isolation and being overwhelmed. And that's annoying to me. We have this amazing body of information that can help them, and they're not accessing it even when they're standing right in front of somebody who's fluent in it. So that's really where Answers Now was born, is how do we reduce the barrier of entry to this information for parents so they can make better decisions in the moment. So that's our main pain point, is the millions of parents out there that are feeling like they don't understand their kids, they don't know what to do, whether that's, it's kind of no-brainer in a crisis, but it doesn't have to be a crisis. It can just be at the dinner table and they're not eating as many foods as they would like. Or we had one of our investors got a child on the spectrum, and he's been sleeping in their bed for 10 years. And just in working with the clinician, and she was just testing the system out just to see how it worked and ask questions. And working with the clinician, that their son now sleeps in a little bed next to their bed, and we're going to be working them kind of down the hall. She is out there in California. Kid goes to a top flight school. She has in-home ABA therapy. She gets everything, like her son, and just that simple kind of thing. But that was a huge quality of life benefit for them, and achieved literally just through texting with the clinician.
Incredible. So it sounds like you kind of wrapped up the values of your organization in that description as well, in terms of providing that support to parents that oftentimes they struggle to receive.
There's something about this modality that makes it so that parents seem like they're more open to suggestions. I've heard that consistently as a complaint from behavior analysts. Well, I do the parent training, but then they don't do what I say, or I ask them to participate, but they use it more as a kind of a timeout. But when, for whatever reason, when we kind of have this setup, we've got parents that are willing to take the information in, try the recommendation, and then come back and say how it worked.
So I'm trying to put myself in the position of the BCBA on the advice giving end here to a parent. And
absolutely.
So the first question I have is just about the, when I first started looking into Answers Now, the first thing that jumped to my mind is what type of information does the clinician have available with which to make these recommendations?
So we have a questionnaire that they fill out when they get on the platform that was designed by BCBAs to elicit the kinds of information that can help them sort of get a head start. What kind of vocal verbal level is your kid at? We don't ask it that way, obviously, but this is a BCBA podcast. What kind of school does your kid go to? How well do they make friends? How well do they socialize? So we're sort of asking these questions that give the BCBA a pretty general understanding of the where the kid is at. And then it's the way that I look at it is I used to do a lot of school-based consultation, and it's not altogether different than coming in and you deal with a lot of low-frequency, high-intensity behaviors. And as a behavior analyst in a school division, you frequently don't ever see these behaviors. They occur when you don't happen to be in the classroom. So you're extremely reliant on teacher report and staff report. And that's the same sort of level of information that we're dealing with here.
And to what extent do you have connections with other members of a child's team? For example, this founder who is a part of this program, he's getting the child's getting in-home services and going to a school and things like that. Do the clinicians at Answers Now, are they aware of all the other supports, and perhaps more than aware, but if a kid has a behavior plan, do they have that behavior plan? Do they understand the function of the behavior and things like that if they're tackling those types of challenges?
Sure, it's a great question. It's up to the parents. We sort of frame it in the same way that I do in the way that I run my school. So the parent decides what the permission levels are and what the communication levels are in the sort of satellite of services that they get. We encourage them to share as much as possible. We've built the platform to be a sharing platform so that parents have kind of different permission levels and they can share different levels of information with their team. But at the end of the day, it's up to the parent.
Hey everyone, as a BCBA, meeting your continuing ed needs can be challenging at times. That's why I have made selected episodes of the Behavioral Observations podcast available for Type 2 continuing education credits. That's right. You can meet a portion of your professional development requirements on the go. Currently, we have CEs for topics including functional assessment, ethics, and supervision. Come learn from podcast favorites such as Greg Hanley, Pat Fryman, Mark Dixon, as well as many other amazing guests. For more information, head on over to behavioralobservations.com/get-CEs. Okay, and so as you can probably tell from my line of questioning here, we were joking before we started recording about this being kind of like an episode of 60 Minutes, but to me I think this is a great example of technology kind of pushing us forward because there's no valence to this comment, but I'm uncomfortable, and I'm not saying uncomfortable in a pejorative way, but this is definitely outside of the box in terms of the types of stuff that we do as BCBAs, and I'm trying to go through the code in my head here, and see what areas that you have to observe in order to deliver services in this way.
So there's sort of a two-headed piece that we've got. We've got the text-based piece with the clinician, and then there's a data collection piece where the parent actually enters data as they move through whatever kind of the program is. So the clinicians, and it's not ready for prime time yet, but the plan is the clinicians can assign a sort of activity for the parent. So say you're trying to teach your kid how to tact, and there's a guided algorithm that the parents walk through, and they enter hey, did it work? Did it not work? And so those two pieces together. There's also the case you kind of talked a little bit about, sort of concerns about quality assurance. One of the things that we realized really early on that's incredible for us is we see all of the data. We see every interaction with the parent. We see all of the back and forth with the clinician. And to the degree that they're using some of the automated things now, we see all of that information. So it gives us a really incredible amount of information to work with.
I see. All right, cool. Well, I could keep going, but I know I want to get to Andy. So Andy, let's dig into BehaviorMe. And just for context, you and Annie came on the show for a kind of a mini interview. A year or two ago when you guys were
2 years ago,
when we were getting ready for the Next Gen Revolution Summit.
Mm-hmm.
So you gave us the elevator pitch to BehaviorMe, or actually probably I would probably say we probably spent about 10 to 15 minutes, I think, talking about what you guys do, and you guys have evolved, considerably since then as well. So let's talk about how BehaviorMe started and but also kind of how the signals in the marketplace kind of led you to shifting to what you're doing right now.
Oh man, that's a great question, Matt. So we started as a business plan submitted over at the University of Florida, and Annie's a BCBA. One of our co-founders, Chris, he was talking about behavior analysis during one of our classes, and I said, "Hey, wait a minute! You just spoke about behavior analysis in the wild. Let's talk, because I don't hear these words being spoken too often." So long story short, we got together and we wrote this 40-page business plan, which is really sort of an archaic way of approaching starting a business. But I actually do highly recommend it as an exercise to really get your thoughts put together into one document. I think it's really good. And there's some other models that I can probably suggest, like the business canvas, to help people put together their ideas for who the market is, what the pain point is, what the resources you need. And this is sort of going into the entrepreneurial side of it for anyone who's interested out there. But anyway, we started off as addressing our pain points as teaching kids basic safety skills using virtual reality, right? What better place or what better medium to use than VR, an environment where you can control for every single condition imaginable, and even create your own sort of fantastical conditions as well, right? And we created these MVPs, as we would call them, minimal viable products, and we started testing them out, right? Can the child navigate? Can the child go up, left, down, right, choose the conditions, yada yada yada, and we started essentially, we got it to a point where we had enough iterations on the product that we felt comfortable enough being able to sell it, right? So we started selling the product essentially. But here's where it's essential to listen to what your customers telling you and what your users are telling you, and more importantly, what they're not telling you, right? So we ran like this for a couple of months, and I'm talking about, this was probably middle to the second half of last year. And a lot of folks would tell us, this is amazing, this is great, but I'm having this real big issue. I might not be able to meet next week. I have to train 5 more people, or I have to hire 3 more people, or I have to do this for whatever, because I had just a couple people quit on me. And we started to identify, like, well, what's the biggest issue here in the industry? Is it teaching skills to kids, like crossing the street, or is it hiring individuals or hiring the proper individuals, right? So we started testing again, and we created an MVP again for as a staffing solution, right? As a sort of a vetting process, and that slowly became essentially what we started off is we started doing an FA simulation, a functional analysis simulation, right? How can we test for this, or how can we train for this? And then ultimately what happened is that we fully shifted over to staffing simulations in order to really hit a bigger pain point, which is the bottleneck of hiring and training therapists for ABA clinics, right? So it's a pre and post hire type of solution where in the middle of the interview, you can essentially ask the individual, hey, put on this headset. Now I need to see you interact with this non-playable character, this NPC who's exhibiting X and Y, Z behavior. Can you data collect this much on them, right? And I can watch the individual as they're doing it. They might look great on paper, right? They might look great in person, but can they actually perform it, right? And can you change the conditions to really sort of ante up the environment, right? And you can record this, and you can literally send it out to your hiring director or hiring manager or whoever the decision maker is. And you can make a better informed decision as to who you're hiring, right? Instead of going through the whole process and then all of a sudden, boom, they just drop out, right? Which is a big problem in the industry right now. There's a huge turnover rate. So can we save people money and time by hiring the right people at the very beginning versus kind of going through the process and losing 50% of those folks afterwards? So that was really dictated by the market, not by us, right? We would have never have known that this was a problem unless we really spoke to a lot of people and started honing in on what they were actually telling us.
Yeah, that's an important lesson. Definitely kind of pay attention to what your customers are telling you. You know, I do most of my work in school consultation. I don't have a team of people or anything like that. But I am going to be doing some work this summer at a clinic, filling in for someone who goes who's going on maternity leave, and speaking to the director there. That is pain point number one: staff. You know, and they're trying to ramp up because obviously, as we all know, these services are in demand, and the biggest bottleneck is that human resource piece. So anything that can kind of streamline that process would be incredibly helpful. So that seems like it is a natural fit to the current needs of where we are. So who's using BehaviorMe right now?
That's a great question. We have about 8 clinics nationwide using BehaviorMe to sort of on both verticals. On vertical 1, which is daily living skills for kids, and vertical 2 staff training or staff simulations. So it's about 8 clinics. We're still running, what we're conducting right now are very targeted pilot testing for the staffing simulations at the moment. So yeah, about eight clinics nationally.
I see. And well, that's pretty cool. I again, I have to imagine that once people get the word that this is something that you'd offer, I'm sure that you'll be a very popular person to connect with. So, are you guys taking any? I'm curious as to, are you guys doing any research as to the efficacy of this modality of training versus, good old behavior skills training, which that's something that I'm curious about if you guys have looked at.
Yeah, so here's the beauty of this vertical. The literature already exists outside of behavior analysis. So, and the models already exist outside of behavior analysis.
What? Yeah. You mean other people know stuff?
Other people know stuff. Other people have conducted research and they've published articles on using virtual reality for training, and it's an effective method of training individuals. Right? I'll cite this research article, it's a Jeremy Bailenson article. He's a researcher out of Stanford University, and essentially it states something along the lines of, in order for you to really learn the processes of whatever you're doing within virtual reality, you have to actually move, right? Like physically move in the space, right? And that's something that virtual reality allows you to actually do. Like you can actually move around, right? The child and take data. You can step back. You can interact with pieces inside the virtual environment, and that's super essential. Versus how we're being trained now is essentially text and video, right? You never get the ability to produce, like have an error or mess up, right? Here you can mess up and it's going to be okay. You can literally just restart the simulation, right? So there's so much knowledge regarding VR and staff training that it is insane. It's so insane that Walmart has invested in training their staff using virtual reality for Black Friday, and you start thinking about it, you're like, yeah, of course they would do that because that would make a lot of sense. Like it's a high magnitude pain, right? That maybe doesn't come as often as other pains come around, but frequency is not as high. But it's something that you still need to train for, right? So it's important. It's important to do something like this.
So what is what's the hardware barrier to entry for something like this? If a friend of mine was a tech guy at our local middle school, and they had a VR setup, and please don't ask me what the hardware was, because this is going back probably like 2 years or so. But I remember, they had the goggles, of course, and then there were these posts that they had to put up in four corners of a room and things like that. And it had to be set up just right, and so it seemed at the time it was a bit of a clunky type of situation. So I don't know, is that still the case with VR, or tell us a little bit about that aspect of it, because I'm sure you've piqued the interest of many a listener here, particularly those in hiring capacities, and if they're wondering about how to leverage this technology, that would be a question that would occur to me. What do I need to do to get into this?
So when we first interviewed about 2 years ago for NextGen, we would have had a completely different conversation about this. And yes, back then you would need the post, you would need your tethered headset onto a capable laptop or PC, and you're talking about a price range of about, at minimum, probably $1,200, maybe $1,300, but at minimum, right? Now we're talking about a price range between $200 and $400, and you don't need all that setup. So essentially what's happening now is that a lot of these headsets are coming out with, will be coming out with inside-out tracking. So instead of having, what those posts do is that they track the position of the headset within the space that you've defined, right? Well, now the headset's going to have trackers that track the outside in, right? So no longer will you need these posts. So the setup time is lower. And then also you're going to get 6 degrees of freedom, which you're already getting with those posts. But again, the setup really sucks, right? 6 degrees of freedom essentially states that you can navigate inside your simulated space versus 3 degrees of freedom where you can't. And I can probably send you some supporting information about this because it's a little bit of a difficult concept to grasp just through like verbiage. There's a really cool little gift that I show everyone. So essentially, it allows you more freedom within the headset and offer the price of anywhere between $200 and $400. So it's actually become very, very, very simple to do this. And I'm not. And one thing that I do want to clarify, it's not the headsets that you find sort of at your dollar store headsets. That's not going to work, right? The headsets that are going to work are, and if I'm going to drop like actual company names, Oculus. The Oculus platform is going to be something that people are going to be wanting to look at. That's the Oculus Go and the Oculus Quest. And then this is more so for gaming, but there's going to be one called the Index that's coming out from Steam. There is the Picos that are coming out as well that also have 6 degrees of freedom inside-out tracking. Regardless, like this market is very fragmented in terms of the hardware. But if I'm going, and we're betting, BehaviorMe is betting on the Oculus platform through and through, just because we've seen them in action. We've actually walked through their offices twice already. They're owned by Facebook. So we've had the pleasure of going to Facebook twice since our time out here in the Valley, and we've seen what they're working on. And wow. I hope everyone's ready for the next 10 years because it's going to be insane. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, wow. I'm just with all the talk about Facebook recently in the news, not in the most pleasant sense. It's kind of gave me a little bit of pause, but I think the opportunities at the same time are also, probably, quite unlimited. So, one of the things I want to dig into here in a little bit is I want to talk about the entrepreneurial piece of this, like funding and things like that. But let's take a minute to talk about where you guys see the field in general. We've talked about your specific offerings, if you will, or the companies that you guys have started up. But from attending conferences, manning booths, talking to various and sundry people, I'm assuming that you guys have a perspective on this that the average BCBA doesn't. So let's hear kind of your perspective of where you think technology is going within the ABA space. Adam, do you want to take that one first?
Sure. I think ABA Desk is a good example of where the technology is moving things right now, is trying to increase efficiencies with the data collection and most importantly, the decision making. As someone who runs a large school and has a lot of control over this stuff, there's still an enormous amount of inefficiencies, and it's the kids who suffer, right? You either end up working on programs that you master very quickly and they keep asking you to touch your nose, or you're being asked to do things that you're showing no progress on. And this is where most of the behaviors occur in school. So I think that's the main one. But around the corner, we were really fortunate to be part of a MetLife Techstars Accelerator, and that opened the door to MIT's Media Lab for us. And I got a chance to go up there, and we're working with them on some of the Answers Now questions and what they're doing around affective computing and using robots and machines to interact with kids and do programming that way is, you said at the top of the show, there's some things that make you uncomfortable. There's a level of discomfort that's like, hey, here's your therapy robot that's going to run programs with you. And they have those now. And so I think that's going to be the sort of the next wave that you see. And on the backside of that is using things like machine learning and artificial intelligence to begin to pull out of all of our experiences the optimized learning for kids, so that you can you can meet them exactly where they're at, and begin to realize a lot of that Skinner's technology of teaching and even Keller's personalized system of instruction types of experiences.
I'm so glad you brought up those two terms, machine learning and AI. You can't avoid those terms, I think, these days, or at least I see them popping up all the time. And to be honest, if someone, if I took this legal pad that's here on my desk and someone gave me a pen and said, write down a definition of what these two things are, I'd be hard pressed. I'd probably, so let's, from your perspective, what do these terms mean? Because I hear them thrown around all the time. And I just, I have to imagine there's some other folks in the audience who are similarly, not up to speed on what these things mean, and perhaps they mean different things to different people. But I guess from the work you're doing, what is AI or machine learning actually? How would you define that?
It's dynamic intelligent decision making. So if you have a normal sort of flow chart and say there's 4 choices that you have at a given point, so everything's weighted identically the first time you go down there, there's a 25% chance that the answer in front of you is the correct one. But as you begin to go through this, and if you think of our program books, I mean, behavior analysis is ideally suited for this type of analysis. So by the second and third time, I realized I as a person would realize D occurs more frequently. But what machine learning does is it makes that analysis over and over and over. And if you have a large enough data set into the millions, it can tell you, oh, hey, next time you're at this position, 99% of the time you go D. And so what, like an ABA desk or a dynamic system like Answers Now begins to optimize the answers. So instead of having to wait for a clinical person or wait for a teacher, the system can tell you what is the best or most likely successful outcome. I use the term predictive. It becomes predictive. It's my dream for my own school, for my own software, is that as my staff enter information, the software tells them what should be the next thing based on all of the information. And we're not quite there yet in our field, but it's coming.
Yeah, I've heard other companies working on things like that as well, especially on platforms where you are logging data virtually or digitally, I guess, and if you have a system that can kind of capture all those decisions and then make some projective or predictive I guess suggestions like you described, that could be helpful for sure. So Jane, where do you see tech in the ABA space? Obviously, you're knee deep in it with ABA Desk.
A little bit. Yeah.
So what are you seeing from your perspective? And you can talk about ABA Desk, but other things that you're seeing as well in terms of.
No, of course. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Adam covered all of it. He didn't leave much to say.
He talked about I thought about that. Adam, when you started talking about ABA Desk, I'm like, oh, you're stealing Jane's fire here.
No, that's okay. You can have my fire. It's okay. No, but also I think another part of it would be, hopefully expanding the access to resources and information, especially where places where ABA services are just really scarce. Or just none at all, especially in countries where autism is seen as something really negative. I'm really hoping that technology kind of expands its reach to help those people and to give those people resources that they otherwise would not have or could not afford, even if they do. Some countries don't, have any assistance for those kinds of services for those kids to get. And then another thing that, I'm hoping to see, and I think a lot of it exists already, is just more app development for the kids themselves, so that learning these new things and addressing skills deficits could be something fun and engaging and personalized, so that they can acquire skills kind of independently of ABA. Not to say that they don't need it at all, but on days that there aren't sessions, so to speak, they can access the content and be provided with reinforcement that's relevant to them, instead of just good job that you usually get with apps, or a little star that goes by. So I guess, something that really kind of personalizes that experience, and I guess takes into account, their interests and their style of learning as well.
Yeah. I think if there's a way to kind of gamify it, I think you'd be onto something that's a winner. It's funny because this stuff has been around for a while. Meaning that, I think it was it in the mid 2000s? I went to ABAI and I saw a presentation. I think the product's name was Teachtown, if I'm not mistaken. And so people have been working on this for quite a long time, and that was a kind of a self-paced, computer-driven type of teaching platform, if you will. Again, it's been a long time since I actually saw the presentation and demo of it, but even way back then with the technology that existed at the time, it still looked pretty cool. But at the same time, we're here in 2019, and there's paper and pencil binders all over the place still, so Andy, what are you seeing from your perspective?
So I would echo what everyone said, what Jane and Adam said. I would say that before this thought sort of flees my mind, it's really ultimately the enhancement of therapy through automation. And it sounds scary, but it's not, because fundamentally what's going to happen here is that we're going to end up helping more people and more families, right? So it's not a scary thought. It's more of a democratization of therapy, right? And I think it has to spread out, right? And I think all of us here are in some way, shape, or form doing that. And Adam, when you said MIT and the robots providing therapy, I'm like, oh, he said it. Okay. Because it is a scary thought, but it is something that will eventually occur and will eventually happen. And it's something that I would say, in order for the therapist to really sort of get the most out of it, is to start experimenting now, right? Drop your pen and paper and start experimenting now with the technologies that are out there. Because sooner or later, they're not going to gun for your job. I think the human's always going to be a vital aspect of this. But in order to really be competitive, right? And we know where this field is heading and how fast this field is going to grow. In order to be competitive, you're going to have to adopt some of this stuff, and that's okay. If you look at historically speaking, looking at technology historically speaking, it's the adoption of it that has allowed the progression of mankind to continue moving forward, right? Like the airplane or the TV or the cell phone, right? Like who now has a flip phone? No one has a flip phone. No one will have a flip phone. I kind of miss the flip phone, I'll be honest, but no one can function without a smartphone, right? So yeah, I would say, echoing everyone's statements, is this is going to be, again, interesting 10 years. I think 5G, that's something that's not spoken of too often. I think 5G is going to have a tremendous impact on how we communicate and the levels and the amount of data that's being communicated over wireless. Yeah, I'll just leave that little tidbit out there, because you're going to start seeing 5G a lot more over the next couple of years. And it's going to start off really slow. It's going to be really clunky. And you're going to be like, why is 5G a thing? But 10 years from now, when 5G is like full force, it's going to be pretty interesting.
All right. So 5G, you're referring to the connection speed for wireless communication.
Exactly.
And we're on 4G right now, right?
We're on 4G. We're on 4G. China's adopting 5G at a pretty fast rate. There have been some big telecom companies that are starting to adopt 5G. We've actually been invited to participate in a 5G lab. I don't think we're going to, but it just brings to light like the type of innovation that 5G is going to bring around. So like one of the things that one of our mentors loves talking about is that before 4G, before 3G, right? who would have ever known that you're going to be on your phone calling for a cab that's called either Uber or Lyft, right? And you can actually track its position, right? And know exactly when it's outside, right? Think about before smartphones, what would you have to do to get a cab ride? You'd have to call in advance, maybe an hour or two, and hopefully they get there at the time you're asking them to get there. And they're still going to charge you an arm and a leg, right? Like, that's insane. We used to do that, and that was not too long ago, right?
Sure.
So in 10 years, when there's 5G, there are unknowns out there that are going to happen. So yeah, I'll stop now.
Well, you said something that I think stimulated some thoughts from. Like, I saw both Adam and Jane raise their hands because they wanted to jump in here. So,
Yeah, you were me? Are you sure? Okay. Oh, nice. I like the gestures. Okay.
So,
anyway, yeah. So, sorry, listeners. There was a thumb. It was facing upward. Yeah. I'll check it. It's okay. Anyway, yeah. So, as Andy kind of was saying, like, everybody should kind of embrace these changes because they are, for our benefit. But I think also, I don't think we should blindly do it. I think, it's okay to be a skeptical, sorry, too early for that word, consumer. And to really give your input, and especially the people that are, for example, still using pen and paper, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, as a developer and as a part of somebody who is in the kind of software and ABA industry, I want to hear that feedback. What is your hesitation? What are you afraid of? What do you think the negative impacts could be so I can address those, or so the industry could address those? And also, don't take it on the chin. Tell us what you don't like and tell us what you will not accept, what is not okay to you, instead of kind of depending on some kind of bystander effect and hoping somebody else will say it. It's kind of like watching the news and you're like, oh, this again? Take an active role because the input matters. You are the industry.
Adam?
I'm going to go kind of information dense here.
All
so
right.
Dr. Joe Lang and Dr. Janet Twyman put together a platform called HeadSprout in the early 2000s that was somewhat based on the same idea as kind of Answers Now, which is, hey, we're going to have an expert and then we're going to have this information and we're going to put them together. And what they did over the 7 years or so as they were putting it together is they realized how to take the person out of it. I have successfully used HeadSprout as a software solution to teach kids how to read and how to remediate reading problems. And it is 100% automatic. It is put a kid in front of a screen and they go through the 80 modules and they come out and now they can read and have reading comprehension. This was 10 years ago that they mastered this. If you are really into this, Dr. Lang wrote a series of blog posts on machine learning and the sort of the transfer of expert knowledge, behavior analysis. That's super easy to find. If you just Google Joe Lang, Layng, and machine learning, you'll find them. They are an incredible blueprint for what could be coming next, and super excited about it.
Awesome. I'm going to do the best I can to kind of run down all these references and get these in the show notes. So if you're looking for this stuff, just go to behavioralobservations.com and I'll have those there for this particular episode. So let's talk about the business of your business, I guess. I'd like you guys to talk about, because there's no, when you're in a startup, you're footing the bill for a lot of this stuff yourself, right? I'm going to probably go out on a limb and just assume that you might be going without a salary or a lot of this work is uncompensated. I'm seeing a lot of head nods here for sure. So let's talk about funding your endeavors here. So what has been your experience with funding, to the extent to which you're comfortable sharing, of course, and more so if there's someone out in the audience who has this idea and they're wondering, gosh, how do I get started? For at least the funding aspect of that, kind of question. What advice or what experiences have you had that you think would be helpful for people in a similar situation to know?
Yeah. So ABA Desk specifically, we're self-funded. I still work about 29 direct hours with kids, so We're self-funded mostly. We both work our day jobs, code at night, and kind of in off time, I give demos and stuff like that. And then we had a really teeny tiny crowdfunding campaign just before our release to kind of like help us kind of push past that finish line. And some people go about finding investors and stuff like that, which is something we want to do at some point. But it's doable. I mean, do we work like a bajillion hours a week? Absolutely. So thanks, coffee. Much appreciated. But I think, putting yourself out there, and also like do some market research before you even dive in and find out, like, is this idea worth pursuing? Because it is hard. Do people actually want it? Or, hey, do I need to change anything? And I think it's okay to have that flexibility. You can't be linear in these thought processes. So like, as Andy was talking about, like, hey, they had a great idea, but it seems like the need was actually in a totally different area. And that's okay. So you have to listen to the market. You can't just be, preschool style, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. You have to listen to everybody and actually find out what they need, because hello, that's how you make money. And how you actually benefit the industry. So
you said something there really interesting, and I want to kind of circle back to that. You mentioned crowdfunding. How did that work for you? What lessons did you learn from that? Was there a specific platform that you used? Tell us a little bit about your experience with that.
Yeah. So we used Indiegogo, and we set a very, very low amount. I mean, it was $5,000, so it wasn't much. And to a developer, that's like
so for
a
those
month's worth of development
hang
salary
on one second.
or whatever.
Sorry. For those who aren't familiar with these platforms, how do they work?
So basically, you have to make like a little pitch video. You have to put in pretty much your entire life story, what you want to do, where the money's going to go to, and you also offer. So with Indiegogo, for example, you offer perks. So whether it's, if you're doing a product, then it would be like, send the person this product for X amount of donations. So you have different tiers of donations. The way we did it is we used obviously swag, and then also really, really discounted rates. So we had a really good one, which is like for a year's worth of data collection, it's $1,000. So we had a few people kind of take us up on that one, but other ones, it was just like really, like a month or whatever for, $10 or something. So that's how we went about it. And then, as soon as the campaign ended, we, sent everybody what they needed to have, and that was it.
I see. Okay. I've heard about crowdfunding in other contexts, and it's not something I've had any direct experience with, so I want to circle back to that and get a little bit more detail. So is that something that you think you would do again? Did you find that experience successful for the goals that you were trying to accomplish?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like down to the wire. So we did meet our goal kind of by our deadline. So that was really cool. And we extended it a little bit past and made a little bit more. So that was nice. But I would say response effort is high, because you have to market it. You can't depend on anyone else to market it. And especially with something kind of as, niche as ABA software, nobody cares unless you're an ABA. So if we made like a Candy Crush, okay, cool, that would be awesome. Everybody would be on board. But it's data collection. And unless I can market it to everybody, I can't at this point. I'm not that creative. So I think that's the hard part, is actually just getting it out there, getting people to care. And also at least for like data collection specifically, it is a hard transition, especially to kind of buy into something that doesn't even exist yet. Right. Where, some people have trust issues, even with existing things that are out there. And to commit to a year, for example, you don't know how it's going to go. And it's a big change for your company, and it's your bread and butter, honestly, because you do have to document your sessions in order to get paid by insurance. So it can't go wrong. It's a big kind of scary change for people.
Wow. Well, hats off to those people who kind of went out on the limb there with you. That's pretty cool that they had that faith. Yeah. You mentioned marketing this. I want to get back to that in a minute, but I want to continue the kind of funding conversation with Andy and Adam here. So Andy, you've had you're kind of living the startup lifestyle here. So I know you're talk a little bit about that.
So we're currently in our second accelerator.
Okay, and what is an accelerator for
So
those of us.
Accelerator is essentially a 12-week program. Most of them are 12 weeks. 12-week program where they bring you in, they give you a set amount of cash, and they tell you, all right, go work on this idea. Don't worry about money because we just gave you a bunch.
And who is the we?
So the we is we're currently at the accelerator called Boost VC, and they only invest in sci-fi startups. Sci-fi meaning either VR, AR, blockchain, and as crazy as ideas as like a self-propelled rocket suits, right? So like some of our investor has equity in a company that has like an Iron Man thing going on, which is insane because that's like that's his investment narrative. That's his philosophy. I want to have the first Iron Man suit, and any technology that gets me there, like we're gonna get there. And like the dude's like my age, he's like early 30s, so like he is really gung ho. He's really bullish on sci-fi, and it's amazing because we are here in an environment where technology really is adopted. So an accelerator is essentially that. We did an accelerator out in Boulder, Colorado called Boomtown, and that was amazing. And this is our second go at another accelerator. There are different tiers of accelerators. And Adam, you've participated in Techstars, and that's an amazing accelerator. That the quality of companies that come out of Techstars, wow! I've been to some of their pitches, dude. Amazing stuff. So yeah, we are living the startup life here in the Valley. Is living in the Valley like the show from HBO Silicon Valley? I would say that a little bit, maybe. I haven't watched enough of the show to actually tell you yes or no. But I will say that some of the absurd stuff that they show there kind of does happen.
Okay, give an example for those of us who haven't seen the show.
So there's so I haven't seen the scene, but I've been told that the scene where a company rents out the Giants Stadium, the San Francisco Giants Stadium, to run like their own like pep rally is actually based off of a true story. Like a company rented out the Giants Stadium in downtown San Francisco, and they ran like their own pep rally. That's insane. Like, where else in the world would you hear about like something like that? Like nowhere. Not even New York. Like this is some really crazy stuff that happens on here. You're like, why is this even a thing? But it's fun though. It's great. I think participating in this accelerator program, they've also put us up in this building called Draper University. So our investors are Tim Draper. He's not our investor. His son is our investor, Adam Draper, and they're like venture capitalist royalty. Like he is the fourth generation venture capitalist. They started VC back when VC wasn't even a thing, back in like the 30s and 40s. Like it is insane. Like these people have seen everything. So they put us up in this building called Draper University, and there's constantly stuff happening downstairs, like hackathons. There's a program called Draper University program where people from all over the world come in and learn about technology and entrepreneurship. And we're just surrounded by so many different amazing people all the time that it's kind of like an adult person's playground, right? Like people are playing Smash Brothers, and other people are coding, and other people are doing this and that, and it's a 24/7 sort of cycle. And you're just in this mindset. You're like, we're going to produce something awesome. Like that is what we're going to do at the end of the day. We're going to produce something awesome that's going to benefit so many people, and there's going to be a company out of this. Like this is going to be insanely beautiful.
That must be pretty inspiring to be around all those folks who are in that kind of constant creation mode too.
Yeah, inspiring enough to wake us up at 5 o'clock in the morning for this.
Yes.
It's been a lot of fun, and regarding funding, I want to clarify. So there's different tiers of funding, right? And I think I want to commend Jane and Dwayne for going the self-funded route, because that's probably the way to go, to be honest. But there's self-funded, there's friends and family, there's angel investors, there's seed rounds, and then there's Series A, B, and C, sometimes D. There's intermittent funding rounds like mezzanine levels or gap funding, stuff like that. That just goes from like all the way from really small companies all the way up to like the really large companies. And to put it into perspective, a company like Central Reach, I believe they did their Series A last year. So in our field, to put into perspective, I think the highest tiered company that has received funding is probably Central Reach. Of course, there's also been like, what are exits, right? What's an exit? An exit is either IPOing, initial product offering, so you're on the stock exchange, and none of our companies are going to do that because we're all kind of like middle market companies. And there's M&A. Like M&A is a huge type of thing.
So that's mergers and acquisitions.
Mergers and acquisitions are a huge deal right now in ABA. I was lucky enough to go to Autism Investor Summit and speak at Autism Investor Summit a couple of months ago, and that's a huge deal right now in ABA centers. And then there's a IPO, and then that's pretty much it. I think I might be forgetting something.
That's it.
Yeah, I know.
It was like getting punched in the face.
It's a lot.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on for sure. Adam, what's been your experience from a funding standpoint?
Sure. I think we're a lot closer to kind of your listeners. We were two clinicians, a social worker and a BCBA, and we had this initial idea. We literally sat in a Starbucks and typed into the search tab how to start a business. And the first step we did was we came across SCORE, which was a really great resource. It's a free resource. It's available nationally, I believe. It's a small business support. So we literally typed in our idea and hit send, and we got assigned a mentor. And we were very fortunate that our mentor was used to be a senior executive at Altria, and he helped us kind of begin to formulate a business plan. They've got all kinds of free resources that they give you to help get you started. The real flashpoint for us was we entered a little tiny local pitch competition, and we won $1,000. And we were like, "Whoa, $1,000!
Four figures, man!"
So let's do that again. So we went to a slightly bigger one down the road called Start Peninsula. We came in third. We lost to a drone and a talking bear, but we got $5,000. We're like, what? We have $6,000 plus what we had if you're going to do this, you got to put some skin in the game. When my partner and I got together, we both, 50-50, we formed an LLC and wrote checks that formed the foundation of all this. Things got serious when we entered a local accelerator called Lighthouse Labs, which gave us $20,000 non-equity, which means they don't get a piece of the company. And that really helped raise our profile in the Richmond, Virginia area. And they've got sort of a burgeoning startup community here. So we started to get people who were interested, and we started getting some investors. And that's where my partner went full-time, which is about the scariest thing that anybody can do. So he stepped off into a full-time role. He was not paid for a while. I'm still not getting paid. So it's very much the startup deal. But Lighthouse was very big for us, and it allowed us to get our first round of investment out of local investors, which was several $100,000. It allowed us to get a full-time technical person, which was crucial for us. We're two clinicians. We don't know anything about technology. These are just sort of the steps. So so now there's two clinicians and a technical person, and that's what permitted us to get into MetLife's TechStars, which changed everything. It's an enormously influential, and not for nothing, one of the chief innovation officer of MetLife sort of took us under his wing. And so it's opened up all kinds of doors. That's what got us the MetLife partnership or the MIT opening. And we're now closing our second round of investment probably this week, which will be close to $750,000. And that's permitted us to hire a full-time CTO, a full-time developer, a full-time marketing person. And we've got about what they call runway. That's how much time you've got to spend the money you've got. So we've got about 12 or 18 months for this particular round. And we're all about customer acquisition and kind of proving out the engagement. And then a lot of the questions that you've got, I hope that we get a kind of chance to ask them, because I had them out of the box. Anyway, I know we've been talking about this for a little bit.
That's okay. It's fascinating. So let's talk real briefly about marketing these services. What have I guess we'll just keep going in order here, counterclockwise, or at least it's counterclockwise on my screen. So Jane, talk about how you've been marketing ABA Desk.
Yeah, mostly the free route because we are self-funding it and we do have bills to pay, unfortunately. So, I mean, Facebook and Instagram have been kind of the biggest ones. And it's kind of a balance too. So like I'm a member of pretty much like every ABA group ever. Like for example, like about 200 of our beta testers were from the ABA Skillshare group. So that was really cool. So I'm going to admit that I hate salespeople, like with a passion. And now I'm like, crap, I have to be one. So I try my best to kind of like what we teach our kids, only talk about it when it kind of fits the context. So if somebody's talking about data collection, obviously I'll pop in and be like, here, yeah, try it. I'll give you a demo, whatever. And then otherwise I'll ease off or I'll just participate because I am a part of this community. I am an active BCBA. So I love sharing resources of all kinds and like I'm kind of, putting together a blog right now to share resources on just like how to be a fun clinician. It has nothing to do with data collection. Might there be some data collection stuff in there? There will be, of course. But I think just really engaging with your market. And then obviously we're going to be at ABAI, this year. We were just at the autism conference. So like spending all our money passing out swag because, you got to pair. You got to have some non-contingent reinforcement. Like here's some stuff, people, because everybody loves stickers. That's about it for now.
Yeah. I think it's good to establish yourself as a presence, for lack of a better term, and certainly before you start making pitches to people, when I started the podcast or prior to starting the podcast, it's funny because I spend probably an embarrassing amount of time on social media, but prior to starting the podcast, I didn't even have a Facebook account, and I didn't get into Facebook until like 2014 or 2015. So I was the late adopter, but I knew I wanted to do the podcast, and I started doing things like what you're saying, Jane. I joined a bunch of Facebook groups and just tried to get ideas of what people were interested in and things like that, and then try to participate where I can, having most of the time having nothing to do with the show. So I totally get that piece where you have to have some level of engagement. And so people can kind of know, like, and trust you. And then when you do have something to offer, then you've already established some level of credibility, and people will be more likely to take you seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, what's been your experiences with marketing BehaviorMe?
I think pretty much the same route as. Sorry. Oh yeah, no, you can't.
You're in.
Yeah, you're good.
Same route as Jane. A lot of Instagram, a lot of Facebook. I want to bring up a really quick story about starting a business, right? And I think Jane, you brought up a really good point about sales, right? Anyone out there who's listening, right? Anyone out there who's listening, and they want to start something, I actually challenge them to think about it from a sales perspective, right? Yes, you want to do something great in the world. Yes, you want to build something amazing. But ultimately, what's going to make you a company, whether you're self-funded or you're funded through investors, is whether you have sales or not, right? Think about just any sort of company that's out there, from the bakery to your corner, all the way up to like Facebook. Like they're all companies that are making money, right? So you have to ask yourself, is someone's pain point large enough that they're willing to dish out $10, $15, $100, $200, $500 to use your product, right? And if you have some genuine doubts about that, then maybe you have to like experiment a little bit, right? And see whether this is really an actual company or not, or maybe it's just a side project. And that's okay if it's just like a side project type, like I'm just doing this for fun. But ultimately, sales are the bloodline of any company, right? So yes, I hate sales too. I absolutely despise it. It's probably, when I'm ever in sales mode, it's probably the lower points of my life. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But you have to. You have to. So always be closing. Always be closing. If you guys have ever seen that movie, I forgot the name of the movie, but always be closing.
Glenn Ross or something like that.
Glenn Ross, exactly. Always be closing. That I think the rest of the movie kind of sucks from what I've heard, but that like minute or two clip is seriously, if you're not in sales mode, then, and the thing is that we're always in sales mode. We're always selling ourselves, right? Whether it be personally or as a company, we're always selling ourselves. So we're always selling something. To your original question, which was marketing, we're actually going to be at ABI, and we're going to have a booth for the first time.
What?
Yeah, we're going to have a booth. We're going to have VR. We're going to have some awesome stickers that I will share with you guys later of Skinner with a VR headset on.
Oh, that's amazing.
And we're going to have our VR headsets at ABI. So if anyone just wants to pass by and try out our VR simulations, then by all means. But that's the first time we're having a booth. And I think going from a guerrilla marketing perspective, it's really been like all just word of mouth, right? Word of mouth. This is virtual reality. This is innovation. Check this out, right? It really, some of our most loyal, our most prominent champions in the field have been people who have come through word of mouth, quite frankly. And those are the people that we're looking for.
Yeah, and if you can give someone an awesome experience, they're going to tell their colleagues for sure. So
yeah, absolutely.
And for you guys who have tables, if you have 2 inches by 2 inches to spare, I can throw some behavioral observation stickers on the corner of them. So.
Yeah. Sure.
All right. Very good. Adam, booth or no booth, what's been your marketing experience with what you guys are up to at Answers Now? Sorry.
No booth so far. We are what's called kind of a two-sided company in that clinicians, in our case BCBAs, are our customers, as are parents of children diagnosed with autism. We've done no marketing to BCBAs. We've got a really nice channel that has brought a fairly steady flow of high-quality BCBAs. I'm very proud of the fact that every single one of them came in with reservations, and we've had zero turnover. Everybody that's signed up with us has stayed with us. It's a really amazing group of people who are trying to tackle this problem. I would not sit here today and say, hey, we're doing it perfectly and we've answered every question you can. But that's, part and parcel of being as far out on a limb as we are, right? Like, this is a really new idea. And so we're attracting people who have a high risk tolerance and also recognize that there's value in this. So we're very clinician driven. We have done social media marketing, just started about a month ago, direct to consumers. We've got 2 paid pilots that are up and running. One is to a school where we offer Answers Now to all of the parents of an autism school. And the second one is, thanks to our MetLife partnership, we are now a covered benefit in a pilot program for a company called Hyatt Legal. So if you work at Hyatt Legal, you get Answers Now automatically as part of your coverage. So we're exploring several channels there. Right now, we're very focused on direct to consumer, but we also recognize that covered benefit model and the model, like my wife runs a ABA in-home program, and she said, I'll pay for this as like my after-hour service. Right? If you guys could reduce the amount of phone calls and texts and emails that I get on the weekends, that would be huge for me for a fairly low cost. We're still working out our financial model, but that's how we're going about the marketing, and some local stuff like local 5Ks and things like that.
Very cool. Well, I know we've blown through the allotted time that we've all budgeted, so I want to thank you guys for being generous with your Monday morning here, particularly Andy and Jane, who got up at the crack of dawn to make this happen. So I want to kind of round this out. I want you guys to kind of let people know where they can find you. So if you want to share your website, if you have a preferred social media channel that you want people to kind of check you out on, and also if there's any stone that we didn't unturn, I think that I usually close the show with advice for newly minted BCBAs. This show's theme is a little bit different. And I know you guys have provided lots of advice throughout this entire conversation, but if there's anything that we've left on the table, feel free to add to that. So, Jane, let's start with you.
Yeah. You actually mentioned quite a few things, so I'm going to try my best to remember all the points I need to be covering.
Where can people find you?
Yeah. So everybody can find us at abadesk.com or, Facebook/ABA Desk. So pretty much Google ABA Desk. We have a lot of different things. We even have like videos of ABA Desk in action on YouTube. I even give demos, I don't know, all week long whenever I can. So you can schedule that actually on our website, or you could just go ahead and, sign up right away. It's up to you. It's contract free. So those are kind of the main avenues. Are you okay with me sharing a promo code?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually made one like for this specific purpose. So if anybody wants to get 50% off for 3 months, it's MC Podcast, all uppercase.
All right, and I'll make sure to have that in the show notes. I'll mention it at the top of the show in the introductory comments as well. So,
thank you.
And any advice, if you have anything beyond what we've already discussed already in terms of someone who has this kind of entrepreneurial itch they're trying to scratch, particularly in the realm of tech?
Don't be shy. Don't be afraid to, I guess, put your idea out there and get feedback, because I think that's only going to make you stronger, or it's going to kind of, maybe, shape it to an idea that works for everybody, that could be profitable, that could benefit a lot of people. Don't be afraid to network. There are so many amazing people that I've met just by doing the marketing, just by kind of being in all the groups and doing all this kind of like social media stuff. And most people are really nice. You have to ask, though. Don't be afraid to ask. That's the only way to find out if something's a yes.
All right, cool. All right, thanks, Jane. Andy?
Yeah.
My piece of advice is step out of your comfort zone. Step out of your comfort zone. That kind of echoes what Jane was saying. If you have an idea, be willing to be shot down multiple times, right, by multiple people. Be willing to change, be flexible, don't have rigid behavior. Not all companies are bad, right? There's a great model out there called a benefit corporation, or B Corp, which BehaviorMe will be certified by summer's end, which is essentially a triple bottom line type of company where it's people, planet, and profits. Think about Tom's Shoes, Ben & Jerry's. They give back to the community. That's what BehaviorMe will be. And you can find us at BehaviorMe.co. We're launching a new website at the end of the week. And we're going to be at ABI booth 849. We are most active on Instagram. So behavior_me. We just started our Twitter, which is also sort of a really interesting aspect, because technology kind of lives on Twitter. Like the technology world lives on Twitter, which is something that we're not used to, but we're getting used to it a little bit more. And yeah, just step out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to speak to people. Don't be afraid to speak to people outside of ABA. I think that's one of the most important parts. Like, don't be afraid to speak to those folks, because they're going to give you some really valuable insight too. And you're going to find better ways of disseminating the science of human behavior by speaking to those folks, right? So yeah, just go ahead and do that. And if you guys, if anyone ever has any questions, just reach out to us at info@behaviorme.co. Whether it be about virtual reality or how to start a company or whatever. Like we love to have these types of conversations all the time. So
yes,
please.
I can endorse that wholeheartedly, because Andy and I have had quite a few chats and leading up to this, so I can vouch for his enthusiasm on this topic. So all right, Adam, where can people find you and more about what your company's offerings are, and any advice that we haven't already provided?
Sure. We're running a little under the radar, so we don't have a whole lot of what you call collateral out there, because we're still testing through a lot of these things. But you can find out about us at getanswersnow.com. That's our main website. You can feel free to email me at adam@getanswersnow.com. The app is available as a free download in the Android store and the Apple store right now, so you can go ahead and download it and test it out, see what it's all about. My advice to you is if you think there's a problem, you're right. My problem that I see out there is we're doing a terrible job of disseminating behavior analysis to parents. And there are millions of kids out there, not just here in the United States, but globally, that are not being served. And I'm not going to open this can of worms too much, but the current model is doing a lot of these kids a disservice by either making them wait a year or 2 years or delivering substandard services. I did want to end with one because I wanted to kind of say, kind of off the top, kind of around the clinical piece. We had a parent who signed up who couldn't take their kid out in public because they were deathly afraid of automatic flushing toilets. And just using text-based services connected to a BCBA asynchronously, which means they're not talking in real time, that clinician gave that parent advice that allowed them to not only go in to a building, but within less than a month, the kid was able to go in and tolerate the sound and use an automatic flushing toilet, which was a huge shift in the quality of care for that family. And it was just done through this platform. So really proud of that.
Well, that's a cool story to end with. Yeah. All right, Andy, Jane, Adam, this has been a thought-provoking conversation, and I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your morning to share these very diverse stories, because you guys are all at different, I guess, points on the timeline and with different sizes of companies, etc. So it's been fun to get these varying perspectives of the this kind of brave new world of tech and ABA. So, guys, thanks again so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Behavioral Observations podcast with Matt Sikoria. You can find Matt's notes on this episode at www.behavioralobservations.com. We also invite you to stay connected with us on Facebook at facebook.com/behavioral observations and on Twitter at Behavior Podcast.